The avoidant was prepared for every possible reaction except the one you gave them. They expected anger, pursuit, desperate attempts to fix things, emotional pleas for them to stay. These responses would have confirmed their narrative that people are too much, that connection is suffocating, that they made the right choice to create distance. But you did none of those things. You did not fight. You did not chase. You did not try to convince them of your worth. You simply left, quietly, with dignity intact, without drama or destruction. This response shattered every defense they had constructed because it was the one scenario their psychology could not process. You were supposed to fight for them. Instead, you fought for yourself. And that choice broke something fundamental in their understanding of how relationships end. Subscribe to understand why walking away with grace devastates avoidance more than any fight ever could, and what this reveals about their attachment wounds. The silence that cannot be rationalized. When you left without fighting, you denied the avoidant the conflict they needed to justify their patterns. They were ready to frame your reaction as proof that you were too emotional, too needy, too unstable, but your calm departure provided no evidence for these narratives. You did not give them ammunition. You did not create drama they could point to as validation for leaving. You simply recognized that the relationship was no longer serving you and made a choice to prioritize your peace over fighting for someone who could not show up. This silence, this absence of conflict, is profoundly destabilizing for the avoidant. They cannot explain why you left without confronting their own behavior. They cannot blame your reaction because there was no reaction to blame. They are forced to sit with the reality that you left not because you were too much, but because they were not enough. This truth bypasses all their defenses and lands directly on the wound they spend their life avoiding. That they are the problem, that their patterns destroy connection, that their fear costs them people who actually mattered. You valued yourself more than you valued them. The most devastating aspect of your departure is what it communicated, that you love yourself more than you loved the idea of them. The avoidant expected you to sacrifice your dignity, beg for their attention, compromise your standards to keep them in your life. This expectation is rooted in their experience with anxious attachment, where people will tolerate anything to avoid abandonment. But you are not anxious. You are secure enough to recognize when someone cannot meet you where you need to be met, and you are strong enough to walk away from that dynamic without burning bridges or seeking revenge. This self-respect is foreign to the avoidance relational experience. It demonstrates a level of self-worth that they have never possessed and possibly have never encountered. By leaving without a fight, you showed them that you have options, that you have standards, that your presence in someone's life is a choice rather than a desperate need. The avoidant realizes too late that they were not the prize they believed themselves to be. You were the prize, and they lost you not through dramatic conflict, but through quiet self-preservation. The absence of closure they cannot escape. When you left without fighting, you also left without providing the closure that would allow the avoidant to move on cleanly. There was no final explosive argument that created clear ending. There was no mutual agreement that things were not working. There was just your decision to leave and your refusal to engage in the back and forth that the avoidance nervous system understands. This lack of closure haunts them because they cannot categorize the ending. It does not fit their script. They do not know if you left because you stopped caring or because you cared enough about yourself to stop accepting less than you deserved. They do not know if you are angry, hurt, indifferent, or at peace. The ambiguity is torture because it prevents them from constructing a narrative that protects their ego. They are left with questions they cannot answer, in a loss they cannot rationalize. Why this response breaks them permanently. You did not fight back because fighting would have required you to invest energy in someone who was not investing in you. You left because staying would have required you to abandon yourself. This choice, rooted in self-respect rather than revenge, breaks the avoidant because it proves that their strategy of being unavailable does not create the power dynamic they believed it would. It proves that walking away is always an option, that tolerating mistreatment is a choice, and that some people value their peace more than they fear being alone. The avoidant is broken by your departure because they finally encountered someone who loved themselves more than they loved the chaos, and that encounter revealed how profoundly empty their patterns have made their life.